Hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Stanley Bergman, who is the chairman of the board and CEO at Henry Schein. Stanley, how are you today?
Good, Anthony. Thank you for hosting me on your program. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm so excited. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, about Henry Schein, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Anthony, Henry Schein is the largest provider of products and related services to office-based healthcare practitioners. We have about 1 million customers around the world. That's about 1.5 million dentists and physicians who buy their products and services from us throughout the world. And essentially, it's consumable products, equipment, software, financial services, pharmaceuticals, anything that a dentist or practitioner may need in their practice. And if you go into a dental practice, you look around, the chances are you'll see Henry Schein product in that practice.
Excellent. And how long have you been with the company for?
I've been with the company for 44 years.
That's awesome. And so being such an impactful business, being with the organization for so long, maybe you tell me, how did you get started with Henry Schein? How did you get involved? And we'll go from there. Start at the top.
Yeah, well, I'm an accountant by background. And 44 years ago, this was a client of mine. And 42 years ago, I joined the company as the first CFO of the company. And my job was to put in a computer system. That was my job. The rest is history. Today, we're the most automated company in our field. Digitally, we drive digital dentistry. We drive all aspects of the healthcare profession using technology. And that started 44 years ago. That's
awesome. So if we think of that 44-year trajectory, summarized in a few sentences, what has that been like from like the ebbs and flows just internally, ebbs and flows with the economy and the market? Can you give us a quick synopsis of what that's been like?
Yeah, well, we started out actually as the first company to offer a complete list of dental products. In other words, whatever dentists may need. And we priced those products. And if you ordered them from us, we delivered them. So we were like a kind of an Amazon 40 plus years ago for dental products. And from there, we took the company to adding different kinds of equipment, entering the medical space, going abroad, adding software, adding various services that we offer to help run the practice, and a whole bunch of activities that help dentists and physicians operate a more efficient practice so that they could provide better clinical care. You can imagine we went from, I think it was $40 million in sales when I joined the company formally in 1980, and we're going to do somewhere around $12.5 billion this year. You can imagine it didn't go as a straight line. There were ups and downs. The world's economy had some challenges along the way. Not every system got installed. Not every customer loved what we did, but ups and downs, and I'd be happy to share some of those lessons.
Absolutely. Well, what I find fascinating just in the brief time we've been together is like you're so laser focused on not only the value that you deliver for the customer, even 40 years ago, and then the focus on the customer. I say, this is who we're serving and everything we do is to add value to them. Do I have that perspective right?
Absolutely. It's all about helping the practitioner operate a more efficient business practice, because we're in the free market, so that they can provide the best clinical care. And in order to do that, we have to delight our customers with the experience. And that's what it's all about.
Awesome. One of the other undertones was innovation, but you said it fairly matter-of-factly. Was it 20 years ago when you installed that computer system, were people just saying, yep, let's jump onto this computer thing and let's jump onto this direct delivery thing? What was the kind of path that you had to go through and are probably still going through as you look at implementing those innovations and exploring innovations as you focus on that value stream?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned innovation because, Anthony, most people think innovation takes place in a lab. In other words, in a chemical situation, you are making a drug, you put a little bit of this, a little bit of that, come up with a new drug, you come up with a new technology. With us, innovation is really in helping our customers succeed in their practice. And we're always coming up with new ideas to help our customers really drive efficiency in their practice so that they can provide better clinical care. That's the innovation we bring to the marketplace. For example, we went to the dentist in 1990 and said, you need to put a PC in your practice. The dentist used PCs at home for playing, games with their kids.
A PC computer, like a personal computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
They used it to play games with their kids, or they used it as a word processor. We said you can use the PC, the personal computer in your practice to drive efficiency in the practice. And you know what? You can even put up an electronic medical record. That was highly innovative. It wasn't traditional technology innovation, but it was using the tools of technology to improve how healthcare is delivered. And as we say, helping health happen.
Yeah. So from a practical standpoint, we think about like communication, we think about change management. Obviously, you have that commitment to your mission and purpose within that. Behind the scenes, what was it like trying to convince people to get a computer into their businesses? Were they adoptive of it? Were they resistant? What are some of those conversations you might have had to have with your team to help make that transition happen?
It was like a fish out of water. I mean, the competitors laughed at us. One competitor that was the biggest player at the time said we're like a three-legged ostrich. We have consumable products, we have equipment, but you're going to introduce software into dental practices? That's ridiculous. That comes from software companies anyway. The software is not the kind of thing that dentists are going to actually use in their practice. So we always tease, always joke a little bit, and we say that, that's some three-legged ostrich, because every practice in the world, the dental practice in the world, has some form of digital technology in their practice today. We began that revolution. How we did that? We had a committed team. At the end of the day, it's all about the team. Our number one asset is our team, and the team were committed to it. We got it done.
Yeah. It's one of the things that you mentioned Amazon earlier, and one of their big kind of breakthrough, because innovation obviously doesn't happen instantly, it's over time. One of their breakthrough things was AWS. They brought AWS in, and it created this whole, revenue, ridiculous amount of revenue for the company through that innovation. It sounds like your three-legged ostrich, that third leg, probably created part of that 40 to 1 point whatever billion in revenue because it was such a sizable innovation within your business. Or were there other big innovations that led to that successful growth?
Of course, that was one innovation, but I'll tell you another innovation that is so simple and obvious today, but in the 80s was not important. The way dental products were sold in the 80s and even into the 90s was you had little distributors throughout the world, and they would have everything in the back office. And they would send out salespeople to collect the orders. We said, you know what? We're going to set up 5 in the United States, giant distribution services systems, so we can deliver product next day. That was unheard of. And then we said, you know what? If you have an order, call a central telecenter to take your order. And you know what? You can even place an order to collect those orders. And we revolutionized the way distribution was distributed. Then we said, you know what? It doesn't only have to apply to the US. Let's take this concept global. And we did that. Then we added the software, and then we added all sorts of services to it. And basically, the revolution was adding incremental ideas to help the practitioner operate a more efficient business. And today, we even manufacture our own specialty products. For example, a dental implant. We make them. The bone regeneration that goes into after a tooth is extracted. We make that stuff, or we package that stuff. So the whole idea of one-stop shop for everything a dentist or physician may need, that was innovation. That was revolutionary. All simple. Each one was just a little bit of an add-on. But you add it together, there's no one in the world that has done what we've done.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And again, for like our listeners, obviously as a facilitator of strategic planning, that alignment with the vision and mission is critical. And it's like, well, why do we have to focus on the mission? Like, why do we do that stuff? It's like a buzzword or a marketing thing. No, because when you're so clear on what you're delivering, then it helps you say, hey, is this going to add value to our customer or not? If it's not going to add value, don't do it. And sometimes they're big and sometimes they're small. And Stanley, it sounds like that, again, hyper focus on it incrementally and transformationally added the massive value and the service to your people.
Right.
So let's maybe switch gears a little bit. I see that you've got an extensive bookshelf behind you, which I assert means it's contributed to that 44 years of leadership. What are some of those, leadership principles? What are some of those guiding ethoses that you would want to share with our young leaders listening so that they can, support a company into, the next years of success?
Well, the books you see behind and my library is all about history and biography. So I love to study what people have done in the past and apply it to the future. I'm not a big fan of reading leadership books because I think at the end of the day, leadership is about common sense. It's about engaging the team. And if you can create an authentic relationship with a team of outstanding people that are committed to what we call doing well by doing good at Schein, but we're very committed to advancing the needs of society while advancing our business. If you can get that kind of commitment from a team, you can do anything you want because you're trusted. So, but you're asking now what are some of the big lessons? And for me, I would say a top lesson is being flexible, nimble, and innovative. We've discussed that. And you come from Vancouver. I don't want to mention a person that may upset you, but there's a hockey player, Wayne Gretzky. I think he didn't play for any of the Canadian teams, is my understanding.
Edmonton Oilers. He won several Stanley Cups with them. But go on.
Yes, exactly. And Wayne said, "Go." I grew up in South Africa. We didn't do much hockey there, ice hockey, certainly not. But he said, "Figure out where the puck is going, and that's where you should go." And I think that's what it's all about. You've got to be flexible. You've got to figure out where the puck is going and try to get there. And that's, to me, the top lesson. But also, I would say, as we said early on, get everybody engaged. To me, the most successful leaders are the ones that actually could run a great summer camp. Can they get everyone to play in the game? To me, that's really critical. And there's no room in the world any longer for bosses. It's about coaches, facilitators, and mentors, and a lot of celebrating of achievements. Because in order to get things done, you have to make a lot of mistakes. And then you celebrate the achievements.
Absolutely. I'll take an opportunity to shout out one of my friends and clients, Paul Tamburello from Little Man Ice Cream in Colorado. He is the exact definition of the person that could run a great summer camp. So Paul, if you're listening, I hope you're doing excellent.
I really haven't heard that. I'd love to speak to Paul because I got all my skills at summer camp.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he used to lead camps and do a lot of missionary work. So he's a cool guy. But it's interesting that you had said, hey, I don't learn from those typical books. Is why we say, hey, don't interview consultants most of the time. But I can see on your back end Winston Churchill and Nelson Mandela, and what I find, and Wayne Gretzky, so three great leaders. But
where is she now? Eleanor Roosevelt. I don't think her book's up today.
Oh, you got no. I actually got Abe Lincoln. You got no share of
Abe Lincoln. I'm sorry, you're Canadian, but Abe Lincoln was important in the United States, and Mandela was important in the country I came from. But Eleanor Roosevelt's important too.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't read all of I was trying, but I couldn't read all of the sides of the book. But what I find interesting is you used the Wayne Gretzky analogy about going where the puck is. And then at the same time, you said from a leadership perspective, not just moving people forward, being flexible, nimble, innovative, and celebrating those wins, but advancing society. And arguably all of the leaders, or I'm sure you've learned from many, but the four that we just discussed, not including Wayne Gretzky, they all advance society. And I think that that's what the opportunity that leaders have now is, not just to do good business, because anybody can make money, I believe. It's, hey, how can you make a difference in the lives of people, in the well-being of people, in the betterment of the planet, and just be good. And so I'm excited for that. I think our listeners resonate with that. I know I certainly do. And on that note, I'm just grateful to have you in a conversation here. So we said, celebrate the wins, learn from the mistakes. So Stanley, what are some lessons that you learned potentially the hard way that stuck with you, said, well, I'll never do that again? And if you've got a story or anecdote without, putting yourself too far out there, I'd love to hear it.
Well, to me, there are two big overriding lessons that I learned the hard way. One is you have to tolerate risk. not easy. You have to give young people a chance to fail. And so long as they don't fail too often, you just got to stand back and let people fail, because at the end of the day, it's through failure and learning and experimenting that you advance any cause. And that's particularly important now if you want to do business on the internet, for example. You've got to be prepared to test and test and test and test. And it's very hard to absorb the losses. But you have to be able to do that. I think that's a critical challenge to advancing any cause, the ability to tolerate risk, ambiguity, and fail. And the second is, to me, I suppose the biggest challenges I've had is when you see a great manager who knows the strategy perfectly and knows what to do, but doesn't share the values of the company, to move quickly on moving that manager out, even though it may cause a huge cost short term, but long term, it's the right thing to do. So tolerating risk, tolerating mistakes, and making decisions on management that doesn't share values are two things that are very hard, but are critical to focus on.
Absolutely. And I can definitely see the tie-in with the two. So one, you can't innovate without failing, because it's a prerequisite. So being willing to go through that process and suffer some air quotes losses, learning to say, hey, how can we do this better? And I think, again, as you had mentioned, the moving society, advancing society forward, if you don't have the same values, then you don't have the same drivers and motivators. And so it's impossible to create a company as successful and as impactful as yours without values alignment. So listeners, as you're going through your strategic planning offsite, don't skip out on that, because it's the building blocks for everything. And grateful, Stanley, for you to share that perspective, like lived in action. Since you talk about shared values, and obviously you've got it, the company is global. What's it been like operating in 30 countries and having to adapt like that one mission, that one mindset? Has it been easy? Has it been challenging? Lessons, anything you can share from leading a global company?
Yeah, well, everybody wants the same, right? Everybody wants to advance their career, put food on the table for their kids, quality of life. Everybody wants to make a little bit of a difference in the world if they can. And our job as a company is to give our team the platform to advance the needs of society. Everyone wants to participate. We're a particularly advantageous position from that point of view, because we're servicing healthcare. Who doesn't want to help people that are sick? So everybody has this in common. Of course, there are particular needs in particular countries because of cultural differences. And one has to be respectful of the differences in cultural needs. But the desire to be successful and to advance the needs of one's family and help society in general are overriding. And there is opportunity to provide forgiveness for people that don't quite appreciate maybe the societal differences. And we come from the United States. We have very clear views on the way the world should be run. And, there is forgiveness if we come across very strong, so long as people believe in that we support the common values that are outlined, which is to have a decent living, to take care of your family, of society in general. So the values are there, and there is forgiveness on there's a tolerance for ambiguity on misunderstanding or misalignment in cultures and language gaps. But it is important, though, to understand these various cultures to be successful internationally.
Yeah. And I hear that the tolerance and forgiveness is, again, going back to that risk tolerance, and the ambiguity is it's a learning, and that the key part is that you're willing to progress forwards within it, versus it being entrenched in your rightness or correctness about your way is the way to go. So I think that's a great, even in a similar culture in the United States, which is a melting pot, of course, dealing with other managers who have different perspectives. The successful managers get it.
But you have to be trusted. There has to be authenticity, and people have to believe that you have common values. I mean, today in the United States, I don't know, it's not quite as bad in Canada, but the country is divided on, there's practically any issue you raise, and it's very hard for anyone to thread the needle these days. Having said that, if people believe that your values are good, they'll forgive if you're on one side of the equation or another that they may not agree with.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we finish up here, I'd love to, is there an organization, mission-based, like not Henry Schein, but like a mission-based organization that you'd like to give some awareness to? I just give you opportunity. Most high-profile people are involved in great organizations. So is there an organization that's close to your heart that you'd like to, give a shout out to and bring awareness to today before we finish?
That's the most difficult question to answer because I have so many.
Shoot, but, I'll give you a couple if you want.
Yeah, I mean, organizations that in the end provide vehicles for education are really important for disadvantaged people. So I would say supporting the major academic institutions that provide access to care, to education, and then if it happens to be in the medical area, to care in general. I think those are very, very important. But there's also organizations that serve the needs of those that are challenged. So for example, there's an organization called Physicians for Human Rights. They take care of physicians that are going into areas where governments don't want them, but taking care of people's lives, which, they take their critical oath and they're committed to saving lives, although people may be in disagreement on the political issues. I think they do very, very good work. So overall, I would say educational institutions, of course, helping to support those that are serving unpopular, if you will, healthcare causes in particularly challenged regions are important. I also think the arts are important. I'm very active at the Metropolitan Opera in New York, so you've got to balance that too. But educational institutions, access to care, there are so many organizations that are doing good work in that area.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. I find that there are so many great organizations that do well, and a lot of times you just don't hear about them, but they're close to people's hearts. So I do try to provide.
I'm a big fan of smaller organizations too. People close to, for example, in this current crisis in Ukraine, with the refugees, there are organizations in Ukraine, but there are organizations on the borders where all the refugees are coming, doing phenomenal work. The big ones, the UNICEFs of this world, etc., they do phenomenal work. They get some government funding. But these little guys who are grassroots, helping families that are just crossing the border from Ukraine into Poland or to Romania or something like that, these people are doing great work and need the support of society.
Awesome. Thank you, Stanley. I appreciate that. Where can people learn more about Henry Schein? Where can they learn more about you? Where can they connect? And if you have any, parting words of wisdom for us today.
Yeah, our website provides information, I'm sure. For those that are listening and have vision and, are worried about implementing their vision, I would just leave them with this neon light that is in my mind every day. And that comes from Nelson Mandela, who once said, "It always seems impossible until it's done."
Awesome. Thank you, Stanley. It's been such a pleasure. I really appreciate the time today. A lot of things to take away, a lot of years of learning condensed into 30 minutes. I so appreciate you being on our podcast today.
Thank you, Anthony. It was great.
Folks, my guest, Stanley Bergman, who is the chair of the board and CEO of Henry Schein. So much wisdom here. I really think that as to be a leader, not only looking forward for your business or your organization, but really being a benefit to society. As Uncle Ben once said, with great power comes great responsibility. So I encourage you to use the response to your ability to move it forward in the right way. So appreciate you watching, appreciate you listening. Would love some comments and feedback on what you took away from today's episode. Thank you again, Stanley, for being our guest today. My name is Anthony Taylor. This has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. I appreciate you for watching. I appreciate you for listening. I'll see you next time.